welcome to the Divine Renovation Podcast. My name's Dan O'Rourke, and I'm excited to be back in studio after a hiatus with two of my favorite guys in the world. Ron Huntley, Director of Coaching and All Things Awesome. How you doing, buddy?
Fun to be back.
It's so good to see you. And I was shocked today, Rob, to learn that you have not actually been on one of our podcasts before. So Rob McDowell, one of the Divine Renovation coaches, you've been coaching for ages. You've been on our team for ages. And for somehow we just never brought you on the podcast. I didn't know that. Right?
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
for those who are listening or watching, I mean, you've been on so many of the things we've produced, videos for our association, webinars, leadership sessions. I'm embarrassed that we've never brought you on set for a podcast.
Well, it was a hidden hurt that I've managed under the surface, I must say. So it is good to now say that I've been on the podcast.
Well, to make up for all your absences and our failure to invite, what we'll do is Ron and I will just stay quiet, and you can carry the next hour by yourself.
There are a few things that I could say, probably sarcastic, but I won't respond to that, just in the interest of maintaining a spirit of unity and friendliness.
Well, so for people who are joining us today, Ron, one of the crazy things is we are in a new space. And we've been the dark trade secret of Divine Renovation Ministry is, well, we had our office at St. Benedict Parish for a long time. We actually had our studio in your basement. And we're no longer in your basement. You must be so thrilled to see that we found somewhere new to be.
Well, I'll tell you, Steve Jobs started in a garage, and so I'm really hopeful for our future. I think all great things have a humble beginning, and so it really is great to be in this space. It's a wonderful space. It's a dedicated space. I think it's going to add to our capacity to collaborate in the studio, but also, too, all of our staff are in one place, and it's so cool for me to be with these people all the time. Rob just came on board at Divine Renovation Ministry full-time, still on the senior leadership team at St. Benedict. Rob and I have worked together for years on the senior leadership team around Father James. He's stayed on with Father Simon and full-time here, so we're collaborating. It's just, I'm so excited.
And one of the things, one of the running jokes on our old studio, Ron, was your house, which, and I don't want to be too facetious because I think it was great that we were able to be there for a year, and it made a big difference. I mean, that's how we produced. I don't know how many things we produced in that studio that was your basement. But in addition to producing things in that studio in your basement, we had this funny problem that reared its head constantly, drove our production team nuts because you live down the street from a national radio broadcast tower. And so the guys would get talk radio and stuff would come in through the lines. And I'm glad to leave that problem behind. I'm a little sad that we won't have that color commentary occasionally swing in when we were doing a recording or a broadcast.
I'm sure Paul's really excited about this because it's a new start. And one less problem he needs to manage, just different problems now.
One less problem. Yeah. And I know the team's still putting our various set elements together. And so it's great that I know they worked hard last week to try and get us ready for this first podcast in the studio. So a shout out to the amazing production team who work hard and behind the scenes in order to make these things happen. I think Ron talked about your big transition. Yeah. I don't know if it's fair to call it a big transition because you've been part of both teams for a long time. St. Benedict Parish, Divine Renovation Ministry, they're separate corporations, organizations, but you've straddled the lines for a while. Rob, why in the world would you be so crazy as to spend even more time with us Divine Renovation people? What drove you there?
Why don't you let me think about that for a while? And then, no, it's just as the possibility of coaching and kind of getting over here. I've kind of always been in the space of, kind of resource development and leadership development and things like that. And I mean, it was kind of the not so secret that, quite frankly, what my job title was not anything that I was really that good at. At St. Benedict anyways. So now that I'm just, only part-time over there, they're actually paying me for the value that I bring to the organization. And so no, the whole idea of resourcing leaders and things like that is just something I've always been passionate about, and how can you equip leaders, and even something that I went back to some things that I worked on like over a decade ago, and just really feel that I'm kind of stepping into who God created me to be more so in this current role, and so I'm excited about what that looks like. And I tend to be a person that I like structure, but I don't like routine.
Right.
and as well. And so the fact of the matter is that I think we've reinvented the organization 3 times in the 2 weeks I've been here. So this may be an overstatement, but not completely false either. So I love change. I thrive on change as well, and
so you got onto a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And,
so kind of being on the front end and watching where things go, and collaborating and dreaming and all that sort of stuff.
Well, Ron, I think this brings up an interesting question for me, because I know one of the things that happens to parishes that are in our network or association, parishes we coach or that we connect with, is they often end up growing, and when they grow, they have to bring new people on team.
Yeah.
And so, seriously, you've just got, Rob is now part of your coaching team. What are some of the ways that you look at forming? What are some of the things that you would do to help form that team now that you've got a changing mix? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, talk about reinventing the organization every so often. Like, it really is I'm constantly being stretched in this role as a leader to resource other people, and drawing new coaches in is consistent with what we've always done at St. Benedict Parish. We're always looking for people of capacity, people who have the gift to bless others, to draw them in, to first identify them, then draw them in or recruit them, equip them, give them a role where they can succeed, and then support them. And those same principles apply to the Divine Renovation Network. And so oftentimes it's through coaching churches that I recognize people who have those gifts to draw out learnings in others and help them to succeed. What's really fun about Rob, like years ago when we hired Rob at St. Benedict Parish, both Father James and I knew that we wanted him. And so, as Rob kind of jokingly said, I wasn't really good at the title they gave me, and we knew that, but we wanted him on because we knew his influence on us and the church would be awesome, and it has been. And so Rob and I came on at the same time in terms of full-time ministry, and we were peers. Like, he had the operations side. Rob used to joke, I never heard it said better, when he said, if it has a heartbeat, Ron takes care of it. If it doesn't, I take care of it. And together we collaborated with Kate and Father James on the leadership team. And I remember one of the things, funny stories that we like to tell, is when we were trying to figure out office space, because that was hard, because we were starting to have more employees than we did have offices. And so Rob and I decided to take the 2 worst offices in the building because we wanted to lead from the bottom up. And so I took a triangle office with no doors or ventilation, and he took the storage room. And at St. Benedict, all the doors are labeled. And so mine was the Reverend Lieberman room, and his was the storage closet. And so we call ourselves Storage and Lieberman. And so we have some history. But, Rob, I got to say, I'm really excited about this, because I do believe in your role at Divine Renovation, you're going to be stepping into something that's going to unleash all kinds of creativity in you, that's going to bless us as an organization, the people in the network, and the people in the association as well. Rob has an incredible mind he's named half the things at St. Benedict. Every time we're thinking about something, he's so good at branding it. In fact, the Alpha book that Father James and I wrote, he came up with the title the other day. I mean, he just has this incredible capacity to get to the heart of things and name it. And that, I'm just so excited. We're going to have so much fun. But always looking for people of capacity. And I've always hoped to get Rob on. And I'm excited, to be honest with you, too, how our friendship's going to grow. I know he makes me a better person when we work together at St. Benedict. I think it's going to be times 3 as we work together at Divine Renovation. And so I'm so excited to have him on board and to see where he takes us. Very wise person with amazing insights that helps us think differently. So it's going to be fun.
Wow. That's a lot of praise, Rob.
Well, thank you. And I would say, in turn, obviously, Ron has driven me in new ways and challenges me as well, because I tend to think strategically, and sometimes that strategic thinking can hold me back from actioning, and so Ron's always been a driver to me and pushed me in new areas and in new ways. And so, I'm anticipating a mutually beneficial relationship. It's going to be a lot of times of challenge, for sure, with each other around some of that stuff, but I'm anticipating great days ahead. One of the things that I remember, I think Father James was the one that said that in senior leadership teams so often whenever a new idea was presented, nobody ever kind of got their way. But when we walked out of the room, we felt that we'd made the best decision for the organization. And I feel, if we can create an environment of collaboration, we're going to see the same thing here as well.
Amen.
One of the fun, interesting things I see in our team of coaches is you guys are all fairly different. And, I think one of our learnings might have been that, different people respond to different types of coaches and better. And it's absolutely true that, Ron, you're a certain type of coach, and Rob, you are a very different type of coach.
True.
And you're both having tremendous impact on the parishes that you coach. Why don't you speak a little bit to how we've seen that work over the last year or two?
Well, I love that very theory, because what we're not trying to do is make everybody the same. I remember years ago, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry as a national sales trainer, and the tendency can be to find something that works and make everybody do the same thing. I've never subscribed to that. I believe everybody's unique and has different gifts and talents, and my goal as a coach has always been to help understand what that is, help people see what that is, and draw it out in them and set them up for success. And it's the same in coaching. In fact, just the other day, I was reviewing some of the coaching videos we've made and watched some of the different coaches coach. And it was so fascinating to watch where their effectiveness lies. And it was so fun to go back and speak into it, because they are all different. But I need them to be intentional about who they are, how they're hardwired, and where they bring value. And I would say the same is true with staffs. Like your parish staff, are you looking for people's excellence? Are you looking for the areas where they shine? Are you making them aware of it? And are you drawing it out of them so they can even have bigger impact? It's one of the things I love about Clifton Strength Finders, and the whole thing behind it is to build people, like, understand your strengths and double down on those. Don't try to fix your weaknesses, the things you're terrible at. Like, limp along in those areas, but really spend your energy in the areas you're great. And so with our coaches, they are all different. They come from different parts of the world, for that matter, different cultures, different contexts, different parishes, and they have different skill sets. And my job is to help see where their excellence is, see where they shine, and help them be intentional about it so that they can give it away and bring out the best in others. It's a ton of fun, but it's a lot of work.
Right. One of the things I've for those who might be listening, it's interesting to see how, some people connect with certain types of coaches. So,
yes.
So and not only that, I suspect people connect with certain types of leadership. And so, the way we respond to those who are trying to speak into our lives, we have to be careful about the way we structure our message, because we have to lead or coach in a given way with each individual that we're coaching with. And in our case at Divine Renovation, we try our best, at least, to be intentional about aligning a pastor, a priest, with a coach that's going to be a good fit for them, which might not be exactly who they think ought to be a good fit for them.
That's true.
But it's something I think that's one of our learning edges, is trying to align our coaches with the pastors and priests that apply into the network.
Well, that's why too, Dan, even in our application process, and that's why we look for and we anticipate robust applications, so that we can read into what people are saying. We can often hear their hearts. And then one of our staff follows up with a telephone call and asks a series of questions, because we're trying to get to that. We're trying to create a win-win situation. Yeah. And to be fair, like, I joke and say I've been fired twice. Like, two of the people that have signed up in the DRN who I've coached, I wasn't a good fit for. I do have a particular style, and some people love it, and some people are like, yeah, we can both feel it's not working, and therefore we're able to transition them over into one of our other folks coaches. And they're thriving in that place. And I'm so happy. I don't take it personal. I mean, I am who I am, and I try to bring the best value I can, but sometimes we're not going to connect. And coaching is about connecting. It's about building trust and connecting, so that you have you really value each other's style and approach, and you can bring the best out in each other. Because to be honest with you, Dan, we learn as much as they do when we're coaching. Do you find that, Rob? Like, you're learning from the people?
For sure.
Yeah?
Yep. Yeah. Well, you're seeing so many different contexts, right? And you're going to have to think, okay, how does this, you're trying to help them, innovate or problem solve or whatever it is in their context. And, it's totally different reality. It's different culture, different, sometimes different country. Probably most of the time a different country for us.
Yeah, that's true. Come on, Canada.
Yeah. And so yeah, it forces you to think in new ways. It forces you to think, okay, if I was in that situation, I haven't faced that personally. And so what's that dynamic look like? Or, for me, it's even sometimes drawing on my past, because I have a pretty varied history as far as different ministry contexts, as rural, city, staff, lead, all that sort of stuff. And so your mental Rolodex is kind of going sometimes through some of those processes to try and help people think through those things.
Yeah. And so if you were to say, like, if we were to say, what kind of coach is Ron, what kind of coach is Rob, what would you say?
Oh my goodness. Are you asking me?
Sure, and let's all speak into that.
Okay, well,
this is an example.
Yeah, well, I think, Ron, my experience of you is that you're so good at focusing on the individual and where they are emotionally and where they are, their level of personal health. And I don't mean that necessarily physically, though it would include physical, I would suspect. But you focus so intently on that and their relational health with those around them. I think that's where I see so many of your strengths. And Rob, I find you to be, you're like the Library of Alexandria when it comes to how to run a parish. I mean, you're unreal in terms of your understanding of approaches that have been applied in different contexts, what's worked, what hasn't. And like you come at it, it would be unfair to say just cerebrally, because that's not the truth. But you have such amazing giftedness in that space that it just stands out as such a clear marker of what you're able to the value you bring into any coaching conversation, which is why I feel spoiled, because I get to talk to both of you all the time. so I get to benefit both from the Library of Alexandria and the guy who wants to make sure I got friends there.
And what's cool, you're right, because Rob has 3 of his strength themes in strategic thinking. He's an amazing thinker, and he's able to process from all of his wealth of experience, all of the stuff he's reading and learning all the time. He's a ferocious appetite for learning and staying current, and then being able to apply it to a person's situation, which is wonderful. And if Dan was coaching in the network, which I know he doesn't have time for, but he's an amazing capacity to come up with new ideas, to take whatever you're thinking about and blow it up. Yeah. And it's really, you make me better that way by always challenging me to think bigger and think into the future, which I really enjoy. I find them compelling. You're always pulling me into what's next. So it's interesting, and that's just an example of 3 different personalities with 3 different angles at life that can help people, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I love that. Most teams will have some complementarity in the same way.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, I think, is key to actually being able to bring that team to excellence. If you don't understand what assets you've got at the table, then I don't think you can be the kind of organization you want to be. Let me ask you a question, Ron, because you took a hiatus of sorts in the summer. Now, I say hiatus knowing full well that a lot of that was actually work travel. So I don't want it to be like, oh, Ron took a bunch of weeks off for vacation. That's not.
He have some vacation.
He did have vacation, and you also were able to do a bunch of travel for the ministry. But now you're back, and I want you to speak to what is it like to be back. I mean, you took a pause with coaching with a lot of your parishes, if not all.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like to be back in the?
It's like coming home. It's like putting on my most favorite pair of slippers again. This week is my first week back, and talking to those guys again. I was so excited to see them again and hear what they've done and to connect them, because you really, I don't know, I just grow so close to the people in the network. And I really, really care about them a ton. And so not talking to them regularly for 6 weeks, while I was also working on a lot of things behind the scene in our ministry, which really worked out well. But, oh my goodness, it's so good to be back. I had so much fun yesterday connecting with our parishes again. I really care deeply about every one of those people and their success. And I just they're in my thoughts and heart all the time. So to be able to connect again on a regular basis, it actually means a ton to me. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I wanted to quickly jump into what we're going to be doing next. We're going to be inviting Father Pat Cosgrove onto the podcast. And before we invite him in, I want to talk about him. And we don't usually do this when we have a guest come in, but because of the nature of this guest, I thought it would be important to speak about him before he comes on camera, because we happen to be in Chalice's building.
Yes.
So our new office, the new Divine Renovation office, is actually, it's in Chalice's building. We've got the top floor, which I think is the penthouse. So he's gifted us the top floor of
the New York skyline. Just picture that. We're at the very top.
We're at the very top. We're at the very top.
We just get to see the other side of Bedford.
Sackville River.
Not even the Bedford Basin, but the other side.
The golden arches are visible if you look in the right window, though. I mean, it's and I think what Father Pat has built in Chalice is something that's actually so exciting, and so I'm excited to bring him on to talk about it. So why don't we come right back and have Father Pat join us? Father Pat, it is such a pleasure to have you on set here today. So welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So
Great.
look, Father Pat, you have, God has done something amazing through you. You founded this thing called Chalice. Why don't you explain a little bit about what Chalice is?
Chalice is a Catholic sponsorship charity
Okay.
that works around the world. We have 15 countries in which we work. We have hundreds of sites and sub-sites, and essentially we help the poor. That's what we wanted to do. Our mission statement is simple. We bring Christ to the poor and the poor to Christ. And that's essential.
That's good.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It keeps Christ at the center of everything. And to me, it says everything. So it begins with, if I can illustrate, remember the man in the scripture that was lowered down and in order to get healed? His friends brought him. Same thing with Bartimaeus, sort of friends brought him. Same with the blind man. His friends brought him to Jesus. And every time Jesus acts with compassion, what can I do for you? And so that's what Chalice wants to do in the first place. We want to bring the poor, those who are in need, to the body of Christ, to the church. And we fully expect, and in our experience, we have found that the response of the church is very Christ-like in compassion, mercy, love, and therefore, and with their donations, and through us, we bring their compassion, their mercy, their love to the poor. So we try to bring Christ to them. So first, the poor to Christ, and then Christ to the poor.
That's beautiful, Father Pat. And what's amazing to me is the size of that Chalice has become, because Chalice hasn't been around for eons. I mean, how long ago was Chalice created?
Back in 1992, an organization called CFCA, then changed its name since, Christian Foundation for Children and Aging, it was called, came into Canada, and they wanted to expand here. And they did, and at that point, I was asked to come onto the board. Very quickly after I joined the board, they left Canada. There was reasons, tax purposes, and so forth. They explained to us that they had to leave. By that time, I had the bug. And
That's a good way to say it.
So I wanted to continue, and they graciously said, you can have the computer. It's true.
It's true.
And so we said thank you, and off we went.
And do you still have that computer today?
We should have it framed, the computer.
That should be like at your front door as people come in.
Exactly, the beginning of Chalice.
And you were making fun of us being in my basement. Like, this is humble
Upon this
beginnings.
computer, I will build Chalice.
I related to that because we were in the basement of the rectory.
Right.
And the first person that worked for us when I hired for free, she volunteered, I love that, was Jackie Mahoney.
Yes.
And she tells us that I put her in the furnace room.
Makes for a good story.
It was great. Actually,
Like the broom closet.
It was a little bit like that. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't really. Actually, she got moved into the furnace room when we grew.
that was an upgrade.
So the furnace room was a promotion.
Yes, exactly.
So if you're looking to hire, I don't think this podcast is going to help at all.
Anyway, that's how we began. And when they left, what we did was we sent out a letter to the different religious orders And this great, we had a couple of responses, and one was from a missionary of Africa, and we started with a school, and we're still there. What's that? Over 25, 26, 27 years ago.
So
that's
Chalice
just it,
is impacting children and families literally in countries around the world.
Absolutely. In a wonderful way, really tremendous way. Not too long ago, we implemented a new way of doing our work. We call it direct family funding. It took us 10 years to get there. And that has a wonderful story. Some other time I'll tell it. But the essential part of it is that we gather with small groups of mothers, mostly, some fathers, and we work directly with them. And they tell us what they need, what their plans are. Every group has a plan for their group and for their lives, and we help them. And we've developed a relationship so that we know their name, we know the kid's name, and we say that all the time. We know their name. Again, like Christ knows us by name. And what you're saying earlier with working with the parishes, you have to know the people you're working with, and you coach. That's what we do. That's direct family funding. We go in and we have all the time. We have regular meetings with our people that work for us. They go into the small groups and they coach to what they want to achieve, to their goals. And we started that because traditionally what we started off with was, we'll buy you stuff. You need shoes? Okay, we'll buy them for you. We'll come in and we'll almost assess what you need, and we'll buy it in bulk so we can get it cheap, and you'll say thank you. Right. And so we used to get it. I used to travel around, and I used to be thanked. Oh, up here, oh, thank you. You're doing some, and you get sick of that because you really don't want it. Right. What you really want to do is say, you help us achieve what we wanted. So I don't have to thank you at all because we achieved it.
Can you give me a story around that, an example?
Well, it depends. Well, at the beginning, example of what? I don't know.
A person, like somebody who's been impacted by this shift in focus, and instead of just buying people's shoes, working with them in groups.
I used to go to Africa all the time, and like I said, we got a lot of thanks. And they were very grateful. And it was always wonderful. But I never had a sense of you're enabling them. So I never got a sense of hope. Thank you. We're still in the same position as we were yesterday. It's almost like what you do when you go downtown and you give the $1 to the person on the street. They say thank you, and if they're thankful, you go, wow, isn't that nice? But they're still there the next day. And they expect to be there the next day.
You expect to see them, and they expect to be there.
You have the same expectations. Nothing's going to change. You're just helping them very well. You're helping them today, and they'll live day by day. That's great. We started doing DFF, direct family funding. We started gathering them in groups, and we started talking to them about their tomorrow. And how do you get that? And what do you want? And when I went back, this same group of people, well, I shouldn't say they're the exact same, but the same site, instead of hearing a lot of thank yous, hardly heard any. What I did hear was, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. And people would get up. I remember a man who says, well, I'm going to create a business. I'm going to start. He had a stove, an oven, and he was making bread and all this stuff. Well, it was funny because by the time he explained where he was going to go, I thought, you ain't going to get there. That's way too big. We don't, but it was wonderful. And he was shooting for the stars. And to tell you the truth, I don't think he believed it, but it was so much hopeful that if he got to the moon, he would have been happy.
Way further ahead.
And the attitude changed. And I don't know, maybe it was always there. We just didn't plug into it. Now we do.
One of the things that, as you're saying that I'm hearing is you used to take a look at what they need. Now what you're doing is going in there and asking them what they want. And
Even more, what you're capable of. You know, where are you going to...
Helping them dream again.
And that's the key. We want to create an atmosphere where you can see a future, where you can have a tomorrow. And what's that called?
Hope.
Hope. That's the gift of hope. Now I can have a tomorrow. And if you can achieve that, I think that's the greatest. And that's why I don't like saying we do this or we build that or we That's not the impact we're looking for. As a matter of fact, we're changing our whole process now. We're in the midst of it, of how do we evaluate. And so many times you kind of evaluate by inputs. Well, we gave out this much, and we gave that, and we built this, and we did that. You know, we built so many houses, and we had so many wells, and people love that. Yes, but those are all inputs. Yeah. And you're saying, well, what do you want to achieve with those inputs? What do you want from the people? And that's what we're trying to say. Are you where you want to be now? Because when I used to go in, and I say I used to because I don't travel anymore as much. I put a lot more effort into the parish now. I'm sure they might be happy about that. I'm not too sure. But anyway, and I stay around. That's a tension for me, you know. So when I go in to parishes, the killing thing for me was in the eyes of the women. And I'd feel they'd break your heart. You know, they were mothers.
When you traveled,
When I traveled, yeah. I remember in Haiti, a site, and we had a clinic there. We sponsored a clinic, and women would come for miles, literally miles and miles over mountains, and come to this clinic. And some of them, their babies, they were so hungry themselves, they couldn't lactate. They couldn't feed their babies. And it broke my heart. I remember holding a child in Africa. It was a different context, but I can remember holding the baby that was dying from malnutrition. And, you know, it was a 6-month-old baby, but it was about the size of it was just tiny, and he still had to hold up its head. That's bad. But what was worse was the look on their mother. It wasn't the exterior thing, and that's what everybody says and talks about, but it's more what's going on inside of the person that's having to deal with this. What does the mother feel when she looks at, and that's what I could see, you know, like it's almost like I'm failing my own child, who I want to love. And that killed me. That's the interior change that we're looking for. Can you now have hope? You see, these circumstances are all outside. Hope is how you're dealing with what you're. Wow.
And I'm not so sure too. I think about it from a people that are partnering financially with what you do. Like, to me, that's an even more exciting thing to partner with. You know, when you guys are defining what success looks like differently, and then being able to share stories of this gentleman who wants to start a business and is going to start a business. How successful it is, we'll see.
Yeah.
But you know, so that the moms and dads are able to then begin to provide and do things differently versus I get enough food for today. I have hope for tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's worth investing in. Like, I think that's exciting. That's awesome.
We hope so. We have to change our story.
Right.
And we're doing that. But
and I think about that relative to coaching. Like, think of what Divine Renovation does. There's nothing you haven't just said that isn't directly applicable to the local parish. Nothing. I was just talking to somebody. I was at the gym yesterday, and I'm just starting back the gym. That is a very painful process. That's just very humbling. But anyway,
God, you and me. Is
He's
that the
French.
gym you mean?
No, actually, it's
Oh, the
working out
gym.
now.
You
Yeah.
mean the actual workout?
Yeah,
gym?
yes,
I thought
believe it
was
or
the
not.
small
Yeah, I
group
know.
that you
Yeah.
have in your parish. Yeah. Okay.
It had just as much praying in his case, though.
Yeah, I was praying a lot more. Actually, dear God, help me. But what was interesting is I met a fellow there, and he's going to be doing Alpha because Bill Scollard, who works at St. Benedict, invited him. I thought that was cool. But he was talking about because he's part of the French community in Dartmouth. And he was saying how everybody, like most of the parents, just drop their kids off for Sunday school and leave. And I look at that and I think, well, why? Because they've already tried church, and it hasn't made a difference in their life. And so they don't expect it to make a difference in their life, because a lot of people's experience hasn't made a difference. And they know it, we know it, priests know it, and we're in this helpless state. Our culture as a church is dying. It's rotting, and it's not helpful. And you know what's so cool about the book Divine Renovation is that it's giving people hope again. And one of the things that I noticed in my first year of coaching, I remember the first 6 months, I thought to myself, is this even making a difference? And so I evaluated each individual parish, and I asked them some questions. What are the 3 things that being coached in the network has made a difference in your parish so far? And what are the 3 ways it's made a difference in you so far? And the one thing that was consistent across every single church and every single person was our church, there's a spirit of hope rising that we've never seen before.
Wow.
And so, again, not unlike what you're doing, because if all you're doing is going through the sacraments, like we're starting to realize it's not
Those
enough.
are inputs almost, aren't they?
Yeah,
in some
that's
way?
right.
You know,
Yeah, we
here's what
fed
we're
so many
doing, yeah.
people, right?
Yeah,
We baptized so
exactly.
many people. We buried so many people. We married so many people. Well, it's like, well, great, but are you transforming their lives? Jesus is in the life transformation business. I love your vision statement or your mission statement. Like, we bring the poor to Jesus and Jesus to the poor. Like, if it's not about Jesus, what are we doing? What are we doing as the church?
Well, what I love too about what you said is the idea of hope, and we're thinking of the people who are in need having hope, but so often those of us that are well off financially, you know, here in North America, we'll see stuff that happens all over the world, and you know, a few people will quit their job and move there, or whatever the case is, but for the most part, the majority of us feel helpless. And what organizations like you do is you give us the opportunity to not just sit home and watch our 24 hours news channel and feel depressed, but to,
You too, eh? Okay.
yeah, you know, but you give the average person an outlet to partner with you and make a difference, right? And so people who are in need, people who are under-resourced have a need. Those of us who are over-resourced have a need. We have a need to give. We have a need to, you know, and that's an outlet for us that we need to just continue to recognize. And so what you're doing is really serving both sides, not just one side.
Point.
I think that is exactly true. Yeah. I'd hope that every one of our sponsors would feel that too, because that's my own personal experience. I asked the bishop when I was newly ordained to go into the missions, and he kind of said, well, maybe when you're 40. I think that was a no. I think that was
Delayed. No.
delayed. You're needed in the parish. But at 40, that's when all of this began, when I turned 40. And so ever since then, I've always felt I cannot get to the missions. I can't do it. And perhaps I think the bishop was wise, because I don't think I would have been much good at it anyway. But I really feel that this was given to me so that I can, in fact, be there and do what I am best at doing, what I am capable of doing here at home, within the context of who I am. So I'm helping as a parish priest and can't become a missionary. The bishop still hasn't said no, or still hasn't said yes.
Yes.
When you're 70.
When I'm you change the date.
It's still not a no.
Yeah, exactly. And that's true, though.
Yeah.
You can't go. You have a family here. You have a life here. You can't go. But you still, missionaries at heart who have a compassion want to make a difference. And, in fact, want to bring Christ into the world. And that's, again, go back. He wants to bring Christ to the poor There's lots of different poverties,
Yes.
spiritual poverties, of course, and physical ones, and hopefully those, you don't divide those. But because you can't, then you have to sit back and say, well, does that mean I can't do anything?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping, saying, yes, you can. Yeah. And I want you to help me because I'm in the same boat as you. I can't go there either.
And Pat, you started with Jackie. So
Yes.
the computer.
Wonderful woman.
And Jackie. How many employees are with Chalice now? And no, you don't need an exact number, but ballpark. Good. More than Jackie, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've increased. We have. And it depends on whether you mean in Canada or around, or
Both.
because we
Oh.
have, directly, I suppose there's about 75 maybe.
That's awesome.
And then indirectly through our sites, then you're talking about hundreds.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did, again, a computer
Yeah.
and a furnace room and a volunteer staff
In Spring Hill.
in Spring Hill, Nova Scotia, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is very small.
Very poor.
Yeah, and does anything good come from Nazareth, right? Is anything, right?
Yeah.
This small little town. Like, how did you recruit people to a cause? Because, you partnered with donors, you partnered with sites, you partnered with people to invite them to work with you both as volunteers and as staff, because I'm pretty sure you still have both. But what does that look like?
One at a time, I was going to say, simply. That's how it grows, or how it grew in the parish. People that once they find out what you're doing, and there's people that had that natural, oh, I like what you're doing. I want to be there, and then come forward. And then you start them off. It's, what can you do? And you try to match talent and gifts with the task.
Awesome.
And we started. Jackie was our organist, but she was a wizard at numbers, and she was in detail. And then we needed somebody that had personality, and so big phone calls into the parishes, and to also. So we got Claire, and we got somebody that we needed some French, and so in the end, I hate to say it, but I think God has brought us a great treasure trove, and ultimately, I think it's a spiritual journey. For yesterday, we had somebody, I was speaking to somebody, and they said, I want to know what my vocation is. And I'm really hoping that, okay, how does Chalice become something as it is for me? It's a vocation, it's a calling to us, because essentially we have to bring Christ to the poor and poor to Christ. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I look for, people are sent to us. I really believe that. We make our need known, and people who love what we do come forward. Not always are they the person you need. Then you have to and we've done that. We've done that several
grown
times.
people.
We have shifted people, and I like doing that. Matter of fact, that just happened to one of our employees just a couple of months ago. She was here. She applied for here. She did a good job, but she wasn't happy. She was just going along. And then we shifted her over here, and now she's calling. She answers the phone for us, for our sponsor. She can't be beat. She's the first one on the phone. The other people says you can't get there faster than she does. Yeah. She loves it. And all of a sudden she feels like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Jim Collins talks about it's not about just having the right people on the bus, but the right people in the right seats on the bus. And Rob, I know you guys at St. Benedict, recently I think about the finance position and how Chris moved into a different role, and just how that's really, he's just reaching a whole new level of impact. And it seems like even peace and joy in his role, and, more clarity, a good fit.
Yeah.
Fit is probably the most important thing of all. Fit is so critical.
I'd say too, your bug, like when you said you got the bug and they graciously let you continue with their computer and see what you could do with it. But that bug is infectious, and your passion for the poor is what is a big part of why people come alongside of that. Because I think about Father James and how he built into St. Benedict. It was one person at a time. And, to the point, like, we got Rob on, put him in a job he was terrible at because we knew Rob was great and we wanted him around. The poor guy had to, he's in that role, but we shifted because we knew that he would bring incredible value to us as leaders and to our entire organization. But you think about bringing Kate on and all the other people is one at a time. And eventually, but what's it based around? His passion for what a church can be. Your passion for how we can mobilize the evangelized to bless the poor. Passion matters.
I used to listen to you, and you used to say a lot, you have to reiterate the vision over and over and over again because people lost it, but it's also that attractiveness to it. If you don't reiterate your vision, who you are and what you're doing, then people that are new hasn't heard it. So you have to keep repeating it if it's going to be heard over and over again. And you have a little bit of passion, I've noticed myself.
We thank you for pointing that out. I think the rest of us would have missed that.
So Father Pat, one of the things you said really resonated with me. You said missionary people want to have impact. And I think from our experience, missional parishes want to have impact. And I think one of the key aspects and what Divine Renovation is focused on is trying to make parishes missional, embrace their mission, because as soon as they do that, you can't hold them back. You can't hold someone who's fallen in love with Jesus. You cannot hold them back from wanting to give, wanting to support the poor. Now, before we started this podcast, you said very clearly to me, Dan, I don't want this to be an ad for Chalice. I am going to break that rule and say, look, I think it's too important not to tell people how they can support, how they can get involved. So if I'm a parish priest, a pastor, and I want to be more involved with Chalice, I want to connect with Chalice, what are some of the ways I can go about doing that?
The best thing to do is we'd love to have a conversation with you, and we would like to be invited to your parish, and it's just to tell your parishioners about us, what we're doing. We're also starting a new program that can be brought into Catholic schools as well.
Oh, cool!
And so we've just developed that last year, and we're still developing that. So that's very good. And we've just opened an office in the United States in Chicago. I hear you going there.
We're going there soon.
Yeah. And we've just opened through a Father Rich Lobianco, and he's going to be our national director there. And so again, if anybody would like to hear about Chalice and participate in that, please call us, 1-800-776-6855.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
And if I'm an individual, if I'm a lay leader, a parishioner somewhere, or someone just happened upon this podcast, and I'm hearing you talk today, and I'm like, I want to help sponsor a kid, or I want to contribute or partner with you financially, how do I go about doing that?
Go to our website, chalice.ca. Just Chalice, you put us on, sponsor a child, we're the first one that comes up.
Brilliant. And so one of the amazing things about Chalice is that you guys get recognized by Money Sense Magazine and others because you are so prudent with your finances. You make those lists, those top 10 lists of
the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, it is, so God bless you and all the work you're doing. So I just, for pastors, for parish priests who are listening, I think this is one of those ways, if your parish has become missional, don't fail to give your parishioners the opportunity to be involved in this kind of work. For all things Divine Renovation, you can check out our website at divinerenovation.net. If you haven't downloaded our app, do so. It's in your app stores. And let me challenge you if you haven't yet done it, if you haven't gone to our website or gone to our app and clicked to commit, if you haven't hit that button to commit yourself to mission, I encourage you to do that. I see we get emails. I get the emails every day. Everyone who clicks to commit, I get to see them. They come in and I look every day. I see what country these people are from. And we get people who are Catholic. We get people who are non-Catholic. We're just challenging you to commit yourself to mission. And so if you're feeling that call, just take that small step to click the button to commit. And otherwise, we'll see you next week at this very same studio. For those of you watching, it might look different next week as the guys begin to assemble it in new, fun ways. But we're so grateful to be back, and thank you for being part of today.